Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the sponsor would yield.
Yes, I will, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Farrell yields, sir.
Mr. Farrell, this morning, or I guess this afternoon, we're looking at this capital budget. Thank you for the explanation on that. If we might go to the amount of capital spending in this bill.
Yes.
How much?
It would be $14.379 billion.
And compared to the governor's original proposal that we saw back in January, is this an increase or is it the same?
It's an increase of $620 million.
Okay. And what about debt in this bill? How much debt outstanding for fiscal year 2017-18?
Total debt is outstanding is $53.5 billion, an increase of $2.6 billion over last year.
Okay, so 2.6 billion over the prior year. So where does that leave us related to the state's debt cap and this year and in out years?
We got the full chart. The executive has not released an updated bond sale schedule. The plan will remain under the cap.
You're confident it remains under the cap,
Yeah.
but will we, by the end of this budget process, you'll be able to hopefully give me those numbers?
Yes, but not the governor's numbers, which are the ones that count.
Understood. What about how much does it increase on the authorized bond caps?
$1.6 billion.
Thank you. And I know one of the things that we've been concerned about, I think I asked this earlier and you weren't prepared at that point to talk about budget gaps. Do we know now on where we expect to be if we enact this budget in total as we're going to see it? Do we know where we're going to be on this year and in out years for budget gaps?
Yes. The numbers we're using, the Assembly believes that in the let me get the right numbers. The executive budget surplus or gap estimate is $492 million
For this,
this year, coming year.
okay?
2019, not
Okay.
this year. This year is zero. If it isn't zero, we're breaking the law.
Gotcha. 492, and then do you have?
Yes, for 2020, it'll be $1,082 million. And then in 2021 is $1,633 million.
That would allow us to keep our commitments that we're making in this budget in the out years and your anticipated revenues. You're looking as much as $1.5 billion 3 years out.
Yes.
Thank you. I know there has been still some settlement dollars. I know in prior years we've had some significant amounts of those. how much settlement money has the state received that is available in this 2017-18 budget?
The original was 9.8, that was what, 3 years ago? Altogether, and it's down to 3 now.
So,
No, it isn't. Yes, for the bottom.
so we're using that amount in this budget, is that?
Yes, we are using it. We are going to use that to balance, if I remember it as we did. This is not the paper.
Is there, I mean, do we have a breakdown of how those settlement dollars are being utilized? Just for this year, not in the
Yeah.
overall scheme of things, but in,
We took the money from there and used it to do this. Yes, we used 1.2 billion for capital projects, and it is 100 million for downtown revitalization initiative, 100 million for counterterrorism and security measure actions, 400 million for Buffalo Billion Phase 2, 200 million for healthcare grants, 320 million for life science initiatives, 65 million for MTA capital projects, and 20 million for non-MTA capital.
so
And there are 2 others, 150 million for deposit to the rainy day reserve funds, and 155 million for potential labor agreements.
So I was going to ask you about that. The governor had proposed a greater amount, I think, to go to the rainy day funds, but you're suggesting 155, did you say? 150 million?
Yeah, 150 million.
And in the, you mentioned money for downtown revitalization going in that. Does that follow the same guidelines as last year, that 10 different downtowns are eligible for 10 million each?
Yes.
Are the downtowns that got it last year still eligible for this year, or are we looking at other downtowns?
I would assume it's others. They're all eligible.
Thank you. So going back again, just to be clear, so how much of the settlement dollars are we utilizing in this year's budget, just the total amount?
That 1.2 is coming good from that. The question here, we're using 1.4 billion of the revenues in this year. The things I mentioned to you before is a 5-year plan, but 1.4 would be spent this year.
So does that leave us then with some unbudgeted settlement dollars that we could look forward to and
Yes.
being able to utilize in future budgets? Do we have
Yes.
an amount on that? Or?
There's 278 million settlement money that is unbudgeted.
Thank you. As you listed off that list, Most of those seem to be capital, non-recurring dollars, which has been my hope for, saying the appropriate use of the settlement dollars is something that would not be looked at using year after year because we're going to have it this year, but, not in other years. So, for instance, the MTA money, I believe there was some, you said capital, but also some that would be non-capital. And so I would just caution that they are probably going to be back looking for that 65 million in future budget years, and using these dollars this year would be could be problematic for future concerns with making our budget.
That's the reason, though, why they're doing all the capital things they're doing, because they're always one-shots. So you don't have to worry about that coming back.
The governor in both majorities did not originally provide new funding for the SAM program. This bill, though, does provide a fifth year of new capital funding for $385 million. So is there a specific purpose for those dollars or projects that are identified for this new capital funding? And is there going to be a application process and whatever for municipalities?
Let's see, that is the 30 and construct projects. Eligible entities, there are, excuse me, there are eligible entities that are capable, who are within the state municipal facilities program, and the eligible entities are the state municipal corporations, water and sewer districts, Metropolitan Transportation Authority, colleges and universities, private colleges and universities, public school districts, public housing authorities, public libraries and library systems, fire districts, public park conservation and non-profit corporations, non-profit things like fire districts, fire companies, fire departments, volunteer rescue, ambulance squads, and schools for the deaf and visually impaired.
So, well, thank you for reading and giving
this is
us.
what it will be. The 385 will be.
Okay, and so thank you for giving us a sense of the process, or who will be eligible to go through it. Do we know the process for that?
Someone knows it, but I don't.
I hope.
This will be things that could be done by members sending letters to the speaker, and they will ask to have things done within their community under this list, things that could be done.
I noticed that you read off some of the funding going to the 4201 or the 853 schools. Do we know which ones of those might be getting them, or again, they will follow a similar application process?
We don't know. No, we don't know.
I'll look forward to finding that out, as I'm sure many of those on that list will be interested as well.
Yeah.
There are hundreds of millions of dollars in discretionary economic development funding for the executive to utilize as he sees fit. Do we have, will the controller have the ability to review or audit those contracts for using those funds?
Yes.
So that's changed procedures from what we've seen before. Are there any strengthening of those, or just?
Same thing. Same as in the past.
Does the budget contain any funding for another round of the regional economic development councils?
Yes.
And do we have just wondering if you would have numbers on jobs through that whole program that we've had. Do we have any ability to see how successful the REDC program has been over the last several years, and the jobs that have been not just retained but created through that process?
No, we don't have a reporting in this, but in another bill, we are working to create ways to watch and look over these programs. But it's not here.
Not here. We do have the Buffalo Billion Initiative.
Yes.
And how much additional funding toward that?
400 million.
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
It was 4 million appropriation.
Thank you. The budget also, I believe, includes $207 million for SUNY Poly's subsidiaries, Fort Schuyler Management and Fuller Road Management Corporations, to support ongoing projects. What are these ongoing projects, and why are they needing more resources to be completed?
The programs are advanced photonics research and manufacturing in Rochester, SUNY Poly Reserves Research Development Partnership in Albany, and Global 450mm Consortium. The strategic projects are about 207.5 million.
So we did have, in the last couple of years, we've seen some problems where in the news related to the two entities that I mentioned and related to SUNY Poly as well as the Buffalo Billion, with some problems with corruption issues, with how the dollars were spent, how decisions were made. Have there been mechanisms put into place in this budget that prevent that type of corruption or bid rigging surrounding the economic development program, so that the taxpayers, the legislators of this state can all feel more confident that decisions being made around economic development programs are being made in the open and for the benefit of taxpayers, not for those who might be making a decision about it?
They're handling the program. The U.S. Attorney's Office has been handling all prior issues, and I guess they will continue until we put something in place.
But as a part of this budget, we haven't changed the way that we oversee that.
No, we have not. Or yes, we have not.
Clean water infrastructure projects, $2.5 billion. Again, just if we go through that, how are we funding that, and what type of borrowing are we doing for that?
Yeah. There's a $10 million for water infrastructure emergency loan fund, a $10 million for IT system undergrades, and $355 million for clean water infrastructure projects after the state 50/20, after projects after state year 21-22.
So we're going to see these dollars going out over the next 5 years.
Yes, yes.
And we're doing this, I'll ask the question, we're going to let the voters of the state or the taxpayers have any input on whether we give this money out or not?
Yes, the legislature will continue, and we are we represent the people, and we will be moving it. And I think the reason you do it is because you've got to move it around from place to place, and we feel this will get it there fast. And as you know, there are programs that need help right now, so we would not like to be waiting for that to happen.
So we're going to do it through backdoor borrowing,
Yes,
using.
yes, and the communities and the legislators will have to be the people that help in telling people what's happening.
The governor proposed $500 million for additional capital grants for hospitals and community-based organizations. This appears to be taken out from the enacted budget. No, it isn't. Never mind.
Never mind.
No, that is in there. I'll let you. It wasn't before, but that's my last.
Start again. Start again.
That's what I was saying last night before I had the wording on this. Let's jump to SUNY and CUNY capital. Are we anticipating seeing dollars there?
Yes. Yes.
And do we have an amount?
For both of them. $834 million between the SUNY and CUNY.
Do we have a breakdown, or
Do we have the breakdown? Yes, we do, I think. How much for CUNY and how much for SUNY? Just a moment.
yeah, I had already.
So you asked, SUNY is getting $891 million. CUNY is getting $404 million. The total is $834 million. Increase, the increases.
Thank you. And then just finally, I see that there's $150 million for the Life Science Laboratory Public Health Initiative.
What number, 150?
150
I thought it was 200.
for the
Yeah.
Wadsworth
Oh, the Wadsworth.
Wadsworth Lab. So I'm just trying to understand that it's a public health laboratory
Yes.
run by the state, I believe. But we're funding it through the Urban Development Corporation. And so I'm trying to figure out what role the Department of Health will have in that funding. It seems like to me it's already the state's lab, but then now we're funding it basically through a different entity within the state. Why not the Department of Health?
I think if I remember it correctly, yeah, it's a they only talk to them and then we determine who we're going to give the money to. They're usually hospitals, so that's why they do use the health department.
Do you plan with what we have yet to see in the budget? Do you have a plan or suggest that we would see language that would give those